cotton gin, Georgia was able to continue to fund the Confederacy. And up until Gettysburg, we were actually winning the war. Here they were coming marching to Savannah, not just 60,000 troops, but 10,000 freed slaves that had a protection following them in. There were 150,000 bales of cotton that lined our, what we call River Street. It's the docks of our city for 200 years. But in 1862, of course, the Confederates, Sherman's agenda and goal was to get to supply ships that were sitting out on the Atlantic Ocean, blocking all of our cotton not being able to be shipped out. And the cotton had been sitting there for actually 2 years. Arnold had evacuated the city, that made a makeshift bridge over the Savannah River. People escaped to South Carolina. Then they sunk the barges and actually emptied all the ammunition of our city into the Savannah River so that they couldn't use it against us. Arnold and the clergy didn't know whether to fight or whether to surrender, so they decided to wait for a sign from God. When Sherman got here, the troops' plan was to light that cotton on River Street. The cotton would just take off all the way down, and then the old pine buildings would just get picked up by the north wind, and the city would be burned to the ground. Although we did start using a lot of brick for the really rich people because of some great fires that we had before the Civil War. Because it had been sitting there for so long, it wouldn't light. Mayor Richard Arnold and the clergy took that as their sign from God to surrender to Sherman on the condition that he did not burn the city to the ground. And they camped in our city for 3 months. It was said to be the bitterest, coldest winter ever recorded in our city's history. Most of them camped out in Colonial Park Cemetery, busted open those vaults, threw the skeletal remains out, and camped out in them. But they also had a board on changed the names and dates and carved and broke a lot of the headstones. We found a lot of them in that 1980s excavation that I told you about earlier. Then they went on to Columbia, South Carolina, and burnt it to the ground, and it ended the Civil War. After that, Sherman had those 150,000 bales of cotton shipped to the New York harbor, and a year later, in 1865, sold it to the European nations for $28 million. Even though they weren't reimbursed for the loss of life, they ended up getting a profit from the war because of that cotton. Had it not been for Mayor Richard Arnold, our city may not have been spared. And of course the women in 1955 that started this demolition. Richard Arnold's grave looked about 20 times worse than this one over here. Totally overgrown, couldn't see it, all weeded up. Well, my husband, of course, being the gentleman that he hated seeing any grave be destroyed. So he went to the executive director, Jerry Fleming, at the time, and said, look, why is the most prominent of Savannians who saved Savannah from being burned during the Civil War, why is this gravesite? No one can find it. It's all, well, the family still lives here. They never paid their perpetuity care. We're not taking care of their gravesite. If they want to clean it, they can. Well, supervisors on the weekends have to work 1 weekend a month to man the offices because the offices are closed on the weekend. So this one particular Saturday that my husband was having to volunteer his time because he was a supervisor, he decided to pull the Arnold family grave. And down in the bottom, he finds this little piece of receipt paper that showed that they had paid their perpetuity care. He got in a lot of trouble. Stress really killed him, is what I truly believe, because he got so much trouble over it. Not long after that, he come into work, just fell over, had a massive heart attack, and died. But what a great story. Yeah. He loved me so much in my line of work. Yeah. And so the Bonaventure Historical Society not only had to come and clean it up, they've had to restore and repair these. You see, there's still a few more to go. And I know it sounds silly that of a story, but every time I get to it, because Richard Arnold is very important to the history of our city. And here was someone that wasn't even from here, but his love for his wife and his love for the dead, being an embalmer and funeral director, he thought it was important. He was a triumph to stumble on it. It was an accident. And so I feel very proud to be able to tell Arnold's story and to have a little personal touch. And that was only 6 years ago. It was not that long ago. No one else ever knew where Arnold was, and they knew that you couldn't get to it. Now, Mr. Sturt that's buried here, wherever you see a grave site where there's boulders, not rocks, visitation stones, but boulders, rocks, that means that that body was dug up from another place and reinterred here. The bricks represent a promise that we'll never dig them up and move them again. And it is unusual to see that because most